Hi, everyone. I believe we're all filing in now. Thank you for joining us. It is Tuesday afternoon. I know it's maybe the middle of the workday, but thank you all for signing on. My name is Lauren Altabelli. I'm the director of the Founding Civics Initiative at the Jack Miller Center. The Jack Miller Center is a Philadelphia-based nonprofit dedicated to teaching America's founding principles and history, and we carry out our mission in three main ways. First, we support and empower a growing network of professors who teach the American political tradition. Second, we leverage our scholar network to offer professional development opportunities for K-12 civics and history teachers. And third, we convene leaders, practitioners, and funders to build a diverse coalition committed to a true renaissance in civic education. The Founding Civics Initiative, the project I work on here at JMC, is that second pillar, and we're really focused on supporting K-12 educators to teach key primary sources in the American political tradition to students. You can learn more about the Founding Civics Initiative and all of JMC's work on our website, which is jackmillercenter.org. And if you didn't already know, this week is Teacher Appreciation Week. And because JMC's mission relies so heavily on the work of professors and K-12 teachers, we're taking this opportunity to highlight three really great educators in our network. I'll introduce them in a moment. The title of this webinar is K-12 Meets Campus, Teaching Civics Together. So as you may have guessed, we'll be focusing on teaching civics at both levels, K-12 and higher ed, and improving civics through K-12 and higher ed collaboration. And when I use the word civics, I'm using it kind of as an umbrella term. It includes things like US history, government, political science, and other related courses. Civics for the Jack Miller Center is the essential knowledge that citizens need to know, and that includes things like American history, the content of our national constitution and individual state constitutions, and the philosophical principles that are laid out in the Declaration of Independence and underlie our form of government. So when we say the word civics 100 times throughout this webinar, we're all referring to sort of that bundle of things, not any one particular course or any one particular set of knowledge, but all of the essential knowledge that citizens of this country need to know in order to be effective and engaged citizens. With that, let me introduce our three panelists, and then we'll get into some questions for them. If anyone in the audience has any questions for any of our panelists, I encourage you to use the Q&A feature, which should be at the bottom of your Zoom window, and I'll do the best I can with the time we have to answer any of those questions if you all have any. With us this afternoon is Jane Highley. Jane is a middle and high school teacher at Devon Preparatory School in Devon, Pennsylvania, where she teaches many courses, including AP US Government, US History and Civics, and Citizenship. She's a 2017 recipient of the James Madison Memorial Fellowship, and she is the 2024 winner of the JMC K-12 Teaching Excellence Award, which we award annually to an educator who demonstrates an exceptional ability to engage students in the story of America through their teaching. Jane, thanks for joining us. We also have Denver Paver. Denver is a teacher at Fairmount Heights Middle School in Newark, New Jersey, where he teaches 7th grade social studies. He's an alumnus of Teach for America, New Jersey, where he's been teaching since 2020. He's also a 2024 American Civic Tradition Fellow with the Jack Miller Center, which means that last summer he attended a one-week summer institute with us and then participated in monthly virtual meetings throughout the following academic year. They actually just concluded last month. Throughout those virtual meetings, they're focused on classroom application, and Denver created some really wonderful lessons about Abraham Lincoln, William Lloyd Garrison, and Frederick Douglass. Thanks for joining us, Denver. Lastly, we have Robert Burton. Robert is the Tocqueville Assistant Professor of Civic Thought and Leadership at Utah Valley University. He's also director of the Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative at UVU's Center for Constitutional Studies. His research and teaching are focused in the fields of constitutional law, American political thought, and political philosophy, specifically on civic education, the First Amendment, and the relationship between conscience and politics. He is a 2017 Miller Fellow with the Jack Miller Center, which means all three of the educators here have participated in a JMC program and have been acknowledged by JMC for their exceptional ability to educate and their interest in supporting civic education for their own students, but also in a broader context. So thank you all for joining. Thanks, Robert, for being here. I'd like to start by asking each of you to share what civics is like at your school. You're all teaching at different kinds of schools. You're in different states. You have different communities in your school. So I'm interested to know what it's like at your different institutions, how much emphasis is placed on civics. Are you the only person teaching civics or history at your school? Is it required? Jane, I think I'll start with you and then we'll move to Denver and Robert.
Hi, thanks, Lauren, and thanks to everybody for joining us. Yeah, so I teach in the suburbs of Philadelphia at a small private boys Catholic school. We're independent, loosely affiliated with the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, but we're independent first, Catholic, and single sex, 6th through 12th. I teach all the 8th grade civics courses. The social studies course in 8th grade in our middle school program is civics. And that is a deliberate placement in our scope and sequence in our social studies program. They get U.S. history, A and B in the 6th and 7th grade, and then they get civics, and then they get a smattering of other courses that they are required to take in the high school. So our students who may take other social studies courses may only get one civics course if they are here all 7 years, and that would be 8th grade civics. It is such a joy and such a challenge at the same time. It's one of the most rewarding things I ever do on a day-to-day basis teaching my 8th grade boys. Um, I am the only civics teacher um, in the building, but obviously we have other history teachers where civics is part of the curriculum, but not called civics. We do offer high school civics as an elective, as a semester elective on an alternate basis. But that is the setup. It is required for all 8th graders to take civics. They don't have any other option. And my curriculum is whatever I want it to be, but it's pretty standard, what you would find in any other civics courses at the middle or early high school branches, political participation, foundations. So we start with pre-revolution, and this year I added a mini unit on citizenship. So I actually went through all 100 questions that are on the citizen that could be asked on the citizenship test. And it was fascinating to see that my students were able to say things like, wow, this is really hard. And citizens, like non-native speakers, are supposed to answer these questions. And I said, yeah. And I took that test actually in 2003 as a naturalized when I was up for my naturalization test.
Yeah, thank you for that overview. Denver, what is civics like at your school?
Thanks, Lauren. So I teach in like downtown Newark at a public charter school. The school itself is kind of growing, but currently at our school it's 5 through 8. Um, my school offers social studies just generally. There's really no distinction between civics versus geography versus government. A lot of the civics is interwoven throughout the year. Um, as like a course of study, it's pretty strictly just American history. Um, like as a seventh grade students, by the time they get to me, like should have a pretty like general understanding of civics. They should understand federalism, the three branches of government, and the functions of the branches by the time they're here. Um, Again, given that it's middle school, that may not always be the case. But yeah.
And did you say are you the only
Oh,
seventh grade social studies teacher or?
yeah, so I'm the only seventh grade social studies teacher. I'm been teaching for 5 years now. I'm actually like the oldest seventh grade social studies teacher at the school. Aside from me, there are two other social studies teachers. The fifth grade cohort, they have like a blended kind of humanities ELA social studies,
Hmm,
but they don't have like an actual social studies class.
okay, thank you. Robert, I know civics is not usually a term used at universities. It's not like Civics 101 or Civics 1000 or anything like that. But like I said in my intro, civics can mean a lot of things. So what is civics like at Utah Valley?
Thanks, Lauren. I actually really appreciated the definition you gave because that's actually part of the problem that I think universities are facing, including ours, right? So you say what civics like. I'm a political scientist, and my discipline has done a bad job for a long time helping develop citizens because the kind of things we focus on are the discipline of political science and the methods and approaches and that kind of thing. And that's important knowledge, but that's not necessarily the same thing as citizenship education, right? The kind of education that citizens need, the understanding of our political tradition and our Constitution. Um, and so the initiative that I direct, the Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative, was actually created by the Utah legislature to try and remedy that problem. So Utah Valley University, where I am, is a open enrollment school. It's actually the largest university in Utah now. Over
Hmm.
40,000 students. We just had 12,000 students graduate.
Wow.
And so right now, civics looks like at the minimum a required course in American institutions as part of the general education curriculum. So this is something that the Utah legislature has actually mandated that all public universities have a course like that. So I teach one called American Constitutional Heritage. And it can be pretty large, 300 students or so at a time. And we go through what were the ideas that went into the framing of the Constitution broadly, right, back to ancient Greece and Rome and other aspects of our intellectual heritage. And then what went into making the Constitution, and then how has the Constitution been amended and changed and implemented throughout American history. But we've also been developing and innovating some new programs on campus. So, for example, we have something called the Tocqueville Fellowship, where undergraduates from any major can come and try and have experiences outside of class, discussions in professors' homes, uh, 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 opportunities to meet speakers and take them to breakfast or take them to lunch.
Hmm.
So they could do that because we see civics as something that needs to be across the curriculum, right? It's not something that should just happen in a political science department. If we've done that, we actually haven't educated citizens very well because that's a very small section, right? And thank goodness that we're not all political scientists because that would be really boring.
Thanks for the overview. I wanted to, this is something that a phrase that Jane mentioned, but I actually think it kind of applies to all three. But Jane, you mentioned the phrase scope and sequence, which that phrase is particular to K-12. I don't think higher ed really uses that phrase scope and sequence, but I wondered if maybe as a follow-up to my first question, in each of your institutions, I'm wondering like how the courses that the students are taking are related to one another. So Jane, you said that 6th and 7th grade is US 1 and US 2, and then 8th is civics, which makes a lot of sense. Denver, I wonder if it's coordinated at your school, or Robert, I'm wondering, and at Utah Valley, there's one required course, but I wonder how it fits into one. You said there it's called American Institutions, so I'm sure it could be different kinds of courses, but like how does it fit into the broader general ed requirement? So maybe Denver, we could start with you and just how does your school think about social studies, since you kind of said it's a broad social studies category?
Yeah, so a lot of the skills that our students need to be taught are taught through like a linear timeline of American history. So a lot of what begins or what our sixth graders start kind of begins with like pre-colonial, like native indigenous cultures, and then like the basic skills that they need to learn throughout the year are wound through this like timeline. So by the time they get to me, we're learning more about like the American Revolution, and then they should end with um like right after Reconstruction. And then right after Reconstruction, I send them off to eighth grade.
So it's like if they're approaching it in a timeline fashion, then like you're saying, the civics concepts are kind of woven throughout, and it's not a
Mhm.
standalone thing, but it's kind of following the track of American history.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Robert, at your school, the American Institutions course, how does that fit into like a broader general education plan?
So, I mean, the sad thing is it doesn't, right? It's seen as a standalone course. You check it off, check the box on your way to your degree, and sadly for many students, it's thank goodness that's over and we can move on now, right? But that's something we're trying to fix. And so we're developing a new minor and certificate in civic thought and leadership. And so the way that will work is there'll be courses identified from as many departments and disciplines across the university that we can think of that are civically relevant, that develop civic skills or important civic knowledge, that are preparing students for public service in any way. And so then there'll be a core group of classes that the Center for Constitutional Studies will teach um, that lays a foundation of civic knowledge, skills, and understanding of civic virtues. And then the electives for the certificate minor are all these classes from all the other disciplines. So we're trying to bring civics out into the university, and then also the course, what is happening, into this minor as a way to show that this is something for all citizens. So I'd love to see a business major
Mm,
or a nursing major also get a
right.
civic thought and leadership minor because they care about being a good citizen, and to see that university isn't just about job training, it's also about becoming a better person and a better citizen. So
Right.
not going great, but we're working on remedying that.
No, no, that's good. I mean, even having one required course in what Utah Valley calls American institutions, I don't know if many universities even have one required course. So seems like you're on the right track. It could be better, but you're on the right track.
Working on it, yeah.
Um, yeah, and then Jane, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to weigh in. I know you made the comment about scope and sequence originally, but I wondered like how does your school approach it? It sounds like it's very well thought out for the middle school, but then in high school there's an optional civics course, and maybe it's less organized on the high school side, but I wanted to give you a chance to follow up in case you had any other comments.
So in the ninth grade, they take ancient world history, and then they are required to take one U.S. history course, whether it's at the advanced placement level or an on college prep level. Um, and then so in Pennsylvania only requires 3 years of social studies, which I think is not correct. I think it should be 4. But they can take 3, and one of them has to be 2 of those have to be what we require in ninth and 10th. Many students who want to add to their social studies load can take electives, and that would be in the form of history of the Supreme Court, some of our other electives, whether half year or full year. We offer 19th century America. I teach the AP level US government course. Like I said, I also teach the high school civics course at the semester length for those who want to hit that and then go on to intro to economics, which is a nice pairing. But we have other offerings that are civics adjacent or civics tangent.
Mm.
So we have lots of offerings, especially for a small school, but that's because we have so many faculty members who have interests and passions that they like to teach as well.
That's great. Yeah, thank you all for that like sort of initial overview and what civics looks like at your various institutions. I wanted to move a little bit to maybe some challenges that you're facing. I have a few different questions sort of specific to K-12 versus higher ed. So Robert, I might come to you first and then Denver and Jane come to you. But what do you see at the university level at Utah Valley when it comes to student preparedness for these courses, either your specific American institutions course or any of the work you're doing through the Center for Constitutional Studies? My curiosity is mostly like universities collect students from all over the place, and I'm wondering if you notice any shared knowledge or if there's any like if maybe freshmen or sophomores are coming in with consistent US history knowledge or government knowledge or anything like that. I don't know what level you teach the American institutions to. I don't know what grade or if it's mixed, but I'd be curious if you notice any shared knowledge. Maybe there's some, maybe there's not a lot, but if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So, uh, our American institutions courses, like the one I teach, are typically taken by freshmen in their first semester. So it's a fairly good barometer of how civic education going in the state of Utah and the surrounding region, as we draw students to the university. And and uh, uh, and as all of you are aware, as a nation, we typically get a failing grade or D, maybe a D on a curve when it comes to basic questions like what are the 3 branches of government, and unfortunately, research we've done in the Center for Constitutional Studies says Utahns are no better than anywhere else in the country. We'd get a D, essentially in civics. And I think I see that reflected in the students, both in terms of knowledge, but also, I used to give a kind of a spiel, get on my soapbox at the beginning of class and talk about the importance of civility in the classroom. And I still do that, and I always will. It's an important civic virtue. But more and more, I'm finding that the students see politics as so divisive and confrontational that I now have a spiel that I give about courage and how important courage is. Because I once asked, a class of 200, 300 freshmen to think of one political topic that really matters to you, that you really care about deeply. And then I asked who would be willing to share, and not a single person spoke up.
Wow.
And I was really surprised by that. But as I, thought about it more and spent more time with the students, I realized they just see politics as divisive and dirty. And that's what it is. They don't want to, put their neck out in a class like that. And so a huge, important part of what I think I do in the classroom is to take them back to what we do have in common. The Declaration of Independence, our shared political history, the struggles for liberty and equality, that Americans have faced and struggled with. So that then shifts their view. And by the end of the class, they are able to talk about politics because they realize that it's something shared more than it is something that divides us, at least in our fundamental commitments to some of these principles and ideas.
Yeah, I imagine it's also a challenge to teach to 200 or 300 students at once.
It is. And I guess sometimes I get to teach smaller sections as well, but
Yeah,
we do our best.
yeah. You highlighted something, the divisiveness and sort of the polarization thing that actually was kind of about the question that I wanted to pose to Jane and Denver, just about this is one challenge that you all might face. If you have other challenges, please feel free to chime in. But I was wondering if either Jane or Denver, sometimes, and it's in the news like a little bit, that civics or social studies classes are controversial because of the content and people not wanting politics, like partisan politics or ideology to enter the classroom. And usually the social studies classes are where that would come in. And I was wondering if you've either experienced that at your school or if any of the sort of news headlines have been about polarization specifically and ideology specifically have sort of affected how you teach your social studies classes or how your school is approaching that. Jane, we can start with you and then go to Denver.
Sure. For this particular school year, when I tell people or even come across parents, say, wow, what are you teaching this year? Oh, I'm teaching civics and AP government. And it's like, oh, wow, I feel sorry for you, or condolences. And I'm like, why? Um, I mean, I know what they mean, but to me, it's not a problem. I mean, the challenge is a blessing. My eighth graders are not prepared for what's in store, just content wise. They may be able to name one of the three branches, and that's not a bad. That to me, that's like, okay, we have work to do. That tells me what's ahead of me. Um, they're not prepared, but it makes it so much more rewarding at the end of the year. My students know, I mean, they know the term grid of search, my eighth graders. They know the rule of four. They can rattle off five of the sitting justices today. And that is not any credit to me. That's because they've done the work and they've realized it is really important to know these things as 14-year-olds. They've got 4 more years at least until they can vote, but they recognize that knowing is, I mean, as cliche as it is, and knowledge is power. They do get so much more invested learning about the country in which they are going to lead. In fact, one of the students that had the privilege of telling their parents that they are, because of their fantastic academic progress throughout the year, that they are able to get exempt from my final exam. And the mom replied back with, "Thank you so much. My son is so enjoyed your class that he started talking about maybe a profession in law." And I mean, that was a very nice compliment, but I don't know if we need more lawyers in this country, but we certainly do need more civic-minded people. And if that student, uses what he learns in this class and beyond, to generate more civility, I think that is definitely something I would feel very rewarded for.
Yeah, that's a great anecdote. Denver, has any of the polarization or like concern about ideology in the classroom affected you or your school at all?
Yeah, so fortunately I haven't had any like pushback from like the community or anything of that sense, like parents or anything like that. But kind of in the same sense that like Jane was speaking on, like a lot of my students are coming with like a blank slate, in terms of their civic understanding or just generally their social studies understanding. Um, like Jane said, that is kind of like in a sense like it's a big uphill battle, but it is a blessing to be able to teach students. And what I find so interesting is that like I think despite like what the current climate is, like the students that I teach now are like really willing to engage with different ideas, different nuances, different topics, and like but because they don't have these sort of blinders on, like I think like undergraduate students or just like typical adults do, they're more willing to engage with ideas. They're more willing to ponder those ideas. So that's been really great.
Yeah, that's encouraging. Jane, did you want to say something?
Yeah. One more thing, specifically regarding polarization. It's not an issue in my school because we make it very clear as an institution that this place is a place for students to find information from teachers and from others, but and then to make a decision on their own, to have agency. We are not activists as teachers. That is not a position that personally I think I should become for my students. I show my students, here are the roads you can take. There are bumps along the way on every road. Figure out what is the best road that you're going to go on. And if it doesn't work, you have other options. It's really fun and exciting because I'm the first teacher that most of my students will encounter in my classes in the 8th grade, where they hear both sides without being asked to consider what their parents think. I mean, they can, and that's fine, or what social media is hyping about in the moment. They can hear logically and they can make decisions on a rational level, like, oh, that's why liberals this and conservatives this, and then MAGA that. And, like they see it in the context of everything is rational and acceptable. But what are you going to decide? And it's okay if you change your mind. That's another thing that my students are recognizing. Like, you don't have to be locked into what your parents believe. And as long as you have the agency to choose and justification for what you're going to choose in terms of what you believe, then that should be accepted.
Yeah.
Raises a
Robert?
great point, Lauren, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think so often we sell our students short on their capacity for civic knowledge and the development of civic skills. Like if you listen to Jane describe her classroom or Denver describe his classroom, these kids are capable of a lot more than we often give them credit for, right? And when you have prepared teachers, again, like Jane, like Denver, it's really interesting. And data shows that reading scores, for example, do better in studying social studies than studying language arts. So, it's because the content is engaging, right? It makes them care. They care about it. They see why it matters. They're bright. They're able to comprehend these kinds of things, and it can be really exciting when you have prepared teachers who can share that passion with them, and actually will lead to
Yeah.
better scores in the things that we do often test. We often don't test, for civics, but we do for reading, and it actually is better prepares them for those tests.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. You all were quite optimistic about the challenges you're facing, which I appreciated. Sometimes we can get stuck in the problems and turn all negative, but all three of you are very optimistic. So my next question was going to try to like turn the attitude around, but you guys already did it. I was going to ask, and we can still do this one, but I was hoping to not get stuck in the problems and ask you each to share a win. I mean, Jane, you had that great anecdote about a student being exempt from your final exam and his parent reaching out and saying that this was so great. But Robert or Denver, do either of you have like one really great win with a student that comes to mind in how you've been teaching civics, or maybe Robert with an event you've done at Utah Valley? But Star, if any particular student win comes to mind.
Robert, you can go first if you'd like.
Sure. I'll share two. So I have an assignment where I have my students memorize an important passage from American political thought, American political tradition. And often they'll do the Gettysburg Address or the first two paragraphs of the Declaration. And I had a student, she was new to our country, and she was determined, even though English was a struggle for her, she was going to memorize the Declaration of Independence. And she had to come back to my office multiple times, trying to sign it off. And I was like, look, like you can memorize something easier. This is 18th century English. English is hard as it is, but you're doing it. And she was just so determined, because she got it. She got why it matters, right? And she's like, I need to understand this. And I love that. Another student came in for his memorization. He's currently serving in Utah's National Guard. And he memorized the Gettysburg Address. And it was so, I mean, it was very moving to me to hear someone who is currently signed up to serve in the military talking about these on are dead, right? And it meant so much to him to do that. So that little assignment, it's just two different students, but that's been a really some really powerful moments that I've had in the last year as I listen to students kind of memorize and focus on these primary source texts, which, by the way, is a great way for diffusing controversy when it comes to parental concerns or other concerns. Just have them read the primary sources, right? Excerpt them, help explain, give background, give context, but have them read the documents themselves. Who can argue with reading, Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln to try and understand our history and the controversies about race that we've struggled with, right? And the treatment of African Americans. I mean, anyway, great way to do that. And I found that to be really successful.
Yeah, thanks. Denver?
Yeah, so I don't know if I have like one specific student, but I'm thinking of a moment at the beginning of the year we were arguing about the merits between like the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist, like loose versus strict construction. And a lot of my students I'd say most of my students kind of leaned more in the favor of like the Federalist argument. Um, but then as we got towards, and actually I used the lesson that we created together with like the Jack Miller Center. We broke down Frederick Douglass's arguments for anti-slavery or like against slavery using the same argument, like the strict constructionist argument. And that itself was just like such an eye-opening moment for my students to be able to read his arguments and kind of have that like jaw-dropping moment was for me really eye-opening.
Yeah, thank you. So the title of this webinar, like I said, is Teaching Civics Together, K-12 Higher Ed. We've talked a little bit about your individual institutions and your individual sort of student experience. Now to talk about the two together. All three of you have experience with the Jack Miller Center, working with teachers and professors at the same time, but I think you might also have individual experience doing that, perhaps through other programs, or Robert, the work you're doing at Utah Valley. And bringing students and professors together is something specifically that I care about with the Founding Civics Initiative. It's kind of the goal of the Founding Civics Initiative is to bring teachers and professors together. So I was wondering if you might each tell us a little bit about a particular experience you had with that, whether it was a professional development program or another situation. But one, I'd just like to hear about your experience, but also what is so important about bringing K-12 and higher education teachers together? What can professors learn from teachers, and what can teachers learn from professors? I'm just curious for your take on why it's important to have civics educators of all levels work together, because civics is something that happens throughout all the grades, but often K-12 teachers and professors don't interact. So Jane, I might start with you if you just want to share your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that if I can get on my soapbox, that civics is a lifelong learning experience. My own three children don't have a choice but to hear about civics and how to be a citizen every day. Their eyes start glazing over at the dinner table, but they know that that's the spiel that they're going to get, and hopefully they can appreciate that a lot more when they leave home. I think it's important to do more collaborations between K-12 teachers and at the academic post-high school level, primarily because two things. What are the students that like Robert would like to have? And for Robert, like from his perspective, where can the course correction happen in the classroom, in the K-12 classroom? And those are things that I'd love to have ongoing conversations, like what are the kind of things that we can do better in the classroom before we send them off to the lecture hall? It's a symbiotic relationship. What are things that, that students can be better equipped, whether it's knowing the Bill of Rights or just having some basic common knowledge, even, regardless of major, that students should be able to, should they be able to answer at least 25% of the question on the citizenship test? I think yes. I think 25 is low, but for every student, not just humanities majors or history majors or poli-sci majors, but what are some things that we can work on together so that we have quality students going through our programs, our courses across the board?
Robert, do you want to respond, and then Denver, we can come to you?
Sure, happy to. Jane hit the nail on the head. I mean, it needs to be a symbiotic relationship, right? A collaboration or partnership. The Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative that I direct is funded by the Utah legislature as an effort to correct both challenges faced in the university and in terms of civic education, but also in K through 12. And so, in the last, each year, we have about 500 teachers from Utah that attend professional development that our center puts on, focused on the American constitutional tradition. Uh, Thousands, 5,000, I think, last year, teacher training hours delivered. So it's something that we spend a lot of time on. And the reason why we're doing it, I think it makes sense that something like a research center at a public institution is involved in this, is because um, our job is to understand the knowledge, right? And then to be able to help then pass that along. Schools of ed for a long time have shifted more and more, it depends on the state and what's required, but more and more away from providing content education and more pedagogical, technological, or other kind of training. And there's good uses for that. But if your history teacher has never really taken substantive history classes, but has only taken teaching history classes, they're missing a fundamental background. And that's not to diss teachers. I've seen some really wonderful examples of teachers where they go above and beyond once they graduate from university to make sure that they understand the documents and they understand the history and they understand the arguments and the controversies. But that's not often on their own dime that they're doing that. They're already working busy teaching days and trying to do this on top, right? I mean, Denver, we did that together over the summer with the Jack Miller Center. So the Jack Miller Center has done a huge job, a very excellent job connecting teachers with faculty. But it also is true when it comes to developing curriculum or standards. So our center is asked to advise on the development of the standards for the new K through 6, developing the curriculum for the new K through 6 standards in Utah. And it went out to bid. An excellent school got the bid. They pulled together their best teachers. And I really appreciate one of the teachers' honesty when we showed up to consult. She said, okay, I know that the Declaration is important. And I know that the Constitution is important, but what's the difference? Right? And for elementary teachers, they have zero background. Like, we totally don't prepare them to teach this. Sometimes the only class they've taken is something like my American Institutions class in their freshman year. And we expect them to prepare the students to go to then Jane and Denver's classes, right? And then Jane and Denver only have a semester, and then they have to come to my classes. Well, that's not enough. And so faculty getting involved in providing some of the background, but then also to learn from the teachers, what's not clicking, right? What needs to be improved. And so there's an important feedback loop there.
Yeah, thank you. Denver, did you want to chime in?
I mean, there's not a whole lot left to be said. Jane and Robert said, I think, what I would have said. But yeah, I really just want to like stress that like it is a mutually beneficial relationship between like academics at the higher ed and like a K through 12 educator. Like without like Robert and the other academics that were there, like I was exposed to like primary sources that I don't think I would have seen in my curriculum had it not been for the Jack Miller Center. And ultimately, that's providing my students with a greater depth of civics, of social studies that they're ultimately going to take with them for the rest of their academic and hopefully their adult lives.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciated the symbiotic relationship conversation because, like I said, I think a lot of times people think about K-12 and higher ed as separate, but when it comes to content that really is supposed to be lifelong content, I mean, it's not like we're talking about AP chemistry or something that's like really niche. And it's not that we don't need people who take AP chemistry and then go on to become chemists, but civics is something that everybody needs, not just political science majors, which is something that's sort of been a recurring theme that you all have been mentioning. So now I have some individual questions for everybody because I know all of you a little bit personally, so I was hoping we could talk a little bit more specifically. Jane, as I mentioned in your introduction, you received the 2024 Teaching Excellence Award from the Jack Miller Center. In your application for the award, you emphasized civility and civil discourse as essential components of the courses that you teach. And you also mentioned sort of the focus that you have on getting students to ask questions for which they don't have a predetermined answer, right? Like sometimes students come up with questions and they have an answer in their mind that someone's going to say, but you really emphasize that it's important that they come up with genuine questions that they don't know the answer to, or they're at least open to hearing an answer they're not expecting. I was hoping you could just talk a little bit a little bit more about why civility and civil discourse and this idea of a genuine question is so important to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's an ongoing conversation in my head. Like, why is this kid asking this question? What's the motive? Um, if they already, if any, I mean, if you're in any conversation, you know, it's human nature to kind of to already think about how you want to answer. But um, in class, if my students already have a set answer where they're not listening to their classmates, they're not even listening to me, not out of disrespect, but because they just want to say their piece. How are they actually listening uh, if their questions are already predetermined or if their answers are already preset? It's like there's no delete button in their mind. And I don't think it's their fault to an extent. I think a lot of it is fueled by the pace of social media. Um, I tell my students my first kind of spiel in my class, in all of my classes, I said civility is rule number one, which is linked with respect. And they don't really know what I mean. I say we talk about civility, I'm not talking about winners and losers. This is not a debate. We are not having debates where people lose and then there are also one winner. Um, because I think that really sets all of us up for having disappointment and hurt feelings, and ad hominems thrown around. I just want more questions to beget more questions and have an appreciation for those questions because, like what Robert said, I think if you don't have the courage to ask, then we're not being genuine about what we really want to know. It's important for us to have the courage to ask and not fear how other people will judge us by our questions. If it's a genuine question that you really want an answer to, disabuse yourself of the answers and accept that, and like accept and expect that there will be a divergence of views from your own or what your parents have told you or what you heard from your latest social media follow. And that the questions that they bring, that they shouldn't fear the judgment just based on the fact that you asked the question. I've seen that a lot leading up to the election, and I really had to kind of hit the pause button to especially for my high school guys who can rationalize a lot more at a much more abstract level than my 13 and 14-year-old students. But even they felt a little bit sheepish asking questions because they didn't want to be judged by the nature of their questions. And I think that's really kind of something that I want to be able to correct in terms of cultivating a much safer classroom every year.
Yeah, it's really important that students feel like they can ask whatever question they want to ask in a genuine way, and they are curious about what the answer is, and there might be more than one answer. So Denver, I wanted to come to you next. You are an ACT fellow with the Jack Miller Center, like I mentioned, and in your application for the fellowship last year, you mentioned that one of your goals as a teacher is to inspire your students to see themselves as a part of the American polity. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about that. Why is it important to you as a teacher, and especially as a teacher of middle school students who are young, right? They can't vote yet. They can't drive yet. They can't maybe volunteer in a lot of ways or participate in civil society. But why is it important to you to make sure that such young students see themselves as a part of the American polity?
Yeah, so another I think caveat I should share is that like majority of my students are Black and brown. And I think oftentimes specifically with the curriculum that we have, it often neglects sharing their sort of perspectives. But I mean, when I applied for this, I wanted to kind of gain an insight to share with them that like, no, their voices are heard, their voices are being shared, and there are still really great resources that they can look on, like Frederick Douglass specifically was like the man that I wanted to share with them. But yeah, I mean, it's so critical because I think if they don't see themselves as part of this cohesive group, that kind of like plants this idea of just maybe being apolitical or not being involved, and then they're not having their voices heard and not actively trying to make things better for themselves, to not critically engage with what's going on in the world. So ultimately, that's why I chose to apply to be part of the ACT.
Yeah, thank you. Um, I do wonder too I don't interact with students directly. I'm not in the classroom, but I do wonder too, something that's kind of been a trend is just the social media aspect. And I wonder how much how much exposure to social media and all the things that are on social media can discourage young people from wanting to be engaged because of how polarized or how overwhelming it might seem. Yeah, so I think your point just about the role of teachers, especially in young students, is important to get them engaged and also just get them thinking about their own role in society broadly. Thank you, Denver. Yeah, and then lastly, Robert, you touched on this a little bit earlier. I was going to read you the Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative's mission. Not that you probably don't have it memorized, but I was going to read it to you and ask you just to talk a little bit about one part of it. So according to your website, and I did check. I have quotes on my notes here. The mission is to develop the next generation of citizens and civic leaders by cultivating the knowledge, skills, dispositions, and virtues necessary for a just, free, and flourishing constitutional republic. And according to the website, you do that through educating students and citizens, supporting K-12 educators, conducting research, and fostering civil discourse. So that's sort of four main ways that you carry that out. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about why teachers is 1/4 of that sort of execution of the mission. And you talked about that a little bit in the work that you've done with all the professional development programs that you've conducted and that you're continuing to plan throughout the state of Utah. But I wondered if there was maybe anything more to say about why, given the broad mission of the Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative, why are teachers such a key component of that as the initiative carries out its mission?
Thanks, Lauren. I hope it's more than just on the website that we're living it every day, and I think we are. I guess first of all, when we tried initially, when we first were tasked with improving civic education quality and distribution across the state of Utah, one of the primary places that we knew we could have an impact was through helping prepare teachers. But in doing so, I just want to note that I think sometimes we place an undue burden on teachers as if civic education is their job, and if it's not working, it's teachers' fault. Some really interesting research that Robert Putnam at Harvard and others have done suggests that some of the best teachers of preparing the kind of civic skills, for example, that are necessary in a democracy are actually not schools and definitely not universities. It's actually, civic associations. It's in families and other community organizations. It's in Little League and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts and churches actually are the best developer of civic skills, being able to speak in a public and organize, to be able to, that's what the data shows, right? And so when we think that teachers are the only people where the burden is placed on, we've got it backwards. They are partners with parents and coaches and everyone else in developing these, and we got to be careful about that. However, that said, they do play a fundamental role. And so we realized that if we could help provide the resources and a trusted source for resources for these teachers, the more we've worked with wonderful teachers in Utah, the more we've realized it's not that there aren't lots of resources out there. It's actually that there's too many. And what they don't know is, where can I find nonpartisan resources? Where can I find principled resources that are going to help teach the things that they already know and care about? I mean, they're history teachers. No one did that because it means lots of money or prestige or because it's easy, right? It's because they care about it. They care about the students. But to be able to help teach the teachers, we thought was one of the most fundamental, important functions that we could play.
Yeah, thank you for talking about that a little bit more. You actually hinted at my last question for you all. So I have one more question for you, and then we do have a couple of questions from the audience that I hope we can get to maybe in the last 5 minutes or so. My last question is, I want to know what drew you each to civics or history in the first place. Why is this subject so interesting to you, and why you decided to become a teacher? Robert, I know technically you're a professor, but you are a teacher, so I'm going to use the
No,
term for all three.
That's my preferred title, actually, is a teacher. Yeah.
So I'm curious because I personally know for me, the teacher who got me interested in this subject was my AP government teacher in high school. His name's Mr. Walsh. I remember reading Federalist 10 for the first time and thinking like, this is the coolest thing I've ever read. I mean, I can't, like, I was so like mind blown about what James Madison was writing about. And because of that class, I decided to study political science in college, and now I work at the Jack Miller Center. And even though I didn't become a teacher, I mean, it had a great influence on what I decided to study and pursue as a career. And I know that teachers can have such a great influence on students that way. So I was curious if you each wanted to share a little bit about why you care about civics so much and why you decided to become a teacher. So Denver, I think we'll come to you first.
Sure. So, I mean, I've always loved history, but I think what compelled me to be a social studies teacher was when I was at James Madison College through Michigan State. We studied all the Federalist Papers, all Tocqueville, all of that. But at kind of the end, like maybe my senior year, it might even have been junior year, I had a professor, and a lot of the undergraduates, myself included, were like looking for internships to go work with Congress people. And he said something that really stuck with me. He's like, answering the telephone for a congressperson is great, but like if you want to actually go change the world, you should go do something about it. And I don't know, that just felt like my bell had been rung. Like that was a light bulb moment. And it kind of changed my course and like what I wanted to do with my career. And then I thought, okay, well, I love this content. Like, how can I go and continue this content? And that's how I ended up in education.
Thank you. Did you want to give a shout out to your professor? You don't have to.
Yeah, I can. He's associated with the Jack Miller Center. Ben Kleinerman said that. I don't know if
Oh,
he remembers it. I'm
nice.
not sure if he even remembers me, but he said that, and it stuck with me, and that's why I'm here now.
Oh, thank you. That's a great story. I'll have to tell Ben when I see him next. Jane, do you want to share why you love civics and why you became a teacher?
Yeah, I come at it with a negative example. I never loved social studies or history. I had uh, what you would consider like a preach and teach style of teaching of learning history. I never took a civics or government class. Either it was because it was not offered, or I didn't know. And yeah, it was just kind of dates and dead white men's names, just kind of regurgitated to me. I do remember though, watching episodes or clips from the documentary Eyes on the Prize. And my teacher in middle school, I think it was sixth grade, and just seeing her, she must have seen it all like that, like hundreds of times because she's been there for a while. But I know I saw her discreetly wiping tears from her eyes because we were watching a clip about Emmett Till. And that just had, I mean, I still remember that moment. I get chills just thinking about it. That was a really kind of a moment that I remember like, wow, this still hits her. Whether she lived through it, I don't think she was old enough to have lived through it, but the fact that she was watching it and kind of reflecting on that. Flash forward college, I fell in love with the history class. It was an ancient Chinese civilization class that I was accidentally in the wrong room for, but it was taught so amazingly. I feel bad that I do not remember the professor's name, but it just changed my entire perspective of, oh my gosh, like what have I been missing? And so I pursued English and history as my majors, knew that teaching was somewhere in the future. And yeah, I'm so glad that it was the profession that I chose right after college, and I got my ed degree. I do agree with what Robert was alluding to earlier, that my ed degree was only so I can get a job. I didn't really learn the content until I got another degree in getting a master's in history. Thankfully, I'm going to plug in here the James Madison Fellowship Foundation, through which they were generously able to support my pursuit of a master's degree here at LaSalle University. And I mean, I never read Federalist Papers until in my 20s when I started teaching government and civics, and I felt so slighted. Like I felt like I got the huge shaft of a lifetime. Having been a history major and not having read any of the Federalist Papers, it wasn't even in my syllabus, I don't think. I mean, I read everything that was on there, but yeah, but reading it with the eyes of a teacher, it just makes it so much more rich. And reading all of it through, I try to read all of it, all of the 85 at least a couple times every 5 years or so. And that's one of the things that I'd like to present, hopefully later on this year at the National Council for Social Studies conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, teaching civics specifically has given me so much more back in terms of why I appreciate also being a naturalized citizen.
Thank you for sharing that. Robert, why do you love civics and why did you become a teacher?
Um, has a lot to do with my family. My mom instilled in me a love of all learning and the pursuit of truth. My dad helped me develop a passion for politics and an understanding of the nobleness of politics, or that it can be something noble. And um, and I've been doing it ever since. Politics in particular, I love studying a lot of different things, love teaching a lot of different things, but politics touches all the things I love in really important ways. And so we need to get that right so that we can do all the stuff that actually really matters in this life. Um, so that's why for me.
Thank you. We do have about just 4 minutes left, and we did have one question from the audience that I wanted to ask you all if we can do maybe like 60-second responses. And it's a kind of a forward-looking question, so it's okay if there's no sort of predetermined answer. But Charlie Savinor, who's in the audience, he works for another civic education organization called Civic Spirit. He's actually the executive director there. JMC works closely with Civic Spirit on some programs. And he was wondering if any of you all have any plans for celebrating America 250 in your classes yet. I know that's looking forward a little bit, but if you do, you can share. Robert, I saw your eyes light up. Maybe you can go first.
We've been spending the last 2 years preparing for America 250 because when we're preparing teachers, right, we're actually preparing them so that then in the year of the celebration that they can do that.
Yeah.
One thing we're doing is we're doing a Utah Reads as part of our America 250 celebration. So trying to get every Utahn to read David McCullough's 1776 and
Wow.
having it, getting libraries as partners and things like
Yeah.
that. So that's one of our
That's a
plans.
great effort.
Yeah.
Jane, do you have one? It's okay if you don't. I'm just curious.
Um, well, while planning is a forte of many teachers like myself, it's hard to look ahead that far. I mean, my wheels are spinning. Like, can I get 250 of our students? Our enrollment is around 350, 320 or so. Or at least can I get all of my students to do something that could be a culmination of something? I mean, the possibilities are pretty much endless for me, primarily because I have a lot of control because we're such a small operation here.
Mhm.
But just even, I don't know, I love the idea of having my students just memorize a bit of the Declaration. I mean, I love that. I mean, it's something that I think it would be so impressive that my students would be able to do and to like kind of show off in front of their family and friends and just can be like, yeah, I know the Declaration, do you? I think that'd be just such a kind of yeah, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Especially like you said, if you could get like most of the school or all the school involved, that'd be pretty awesome. It could be like a graduation event or something. Denver, anything come to mind for you for America 250?
Um, no, but I'm open to suggestions. I have like a little bit more agency given that like I've been here not a long time, but like the longest time with most of the social studies teachers, um, to take these initiatives. So I'm definitely open to any suggestion.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all so much. Did anyone have any final comments, Robert, Denver, Jane? I really appreciated your conversation today, so thank you for joining.
Well,
Yeah.
just really briefly, one thing that Jane mentioned, that James Madison Memorial Fellowship is an incredible opportunity. Another is we have started, I should have mentioned this earlier, so I'm just remedying that. We do have a new master's degree for teachers in constitutional government, civics, and law that's a partnership with the Jack Miller Center, among
Yeah.
others, and the James Madison Memorial Foundation. And so as teachers see a need to increase that, there are these wonderful opportunities that JMC has put together. One of the ones they've helped us pilot is this master's degree for those teachers that are looking for that.
Yeah,
Love
that's
to continue
a
to reach
great plug,
out.
Robert.
Yeah.
We'll send some information about that out to the audience here, and JMC is obviously promoting it to teachers all over the place. Thank you for sharing. Again, thank you all for being here. Thanks everyone in the audience. We appreciate your time on Tuesday afternoon. And also, again, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, so special thank you to all the teachers out there, both K-12 and higher ed. Teachers who teach civics and history and political science and all that are doing really important work. And the Jack Miller Center just is very thankful for all the time and energy that you all spend making sure that the next generation of citizens is well informed and well educated. So thank you all. And you can learn more about the Jack Miller Center and all the work we're doing on our website, jackmillercenter.org. And we hope to see you on the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.